Hey, Clemson family, we know Dabo Sweeney treads lightly in the transfer portal, but we're going to get into if he'd just taken one guy, who should have joined this Tigers team to make it better in 2024 as the season approaches.
I'm Daniel Shirley. We're also going to break down the second opponent of the season. Does anybody know who that is? We know who the first opponent is, but what about the second opponent?
Well, freshman Watson Young knows who it is. I'll bet
Yes,
you
he
that
does.
much since the new Clemson offensive lineman, son of a former Clemson offensive lineman, was committed to that school before he signed with Matt Luke and the Clemson Tigers. We'll get into that in a little bit. All right, fine. It's Appalachian State. I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to the Reign Supreme All Way podcast. I don't think there's a lot of suspense making you wait to hear the words Appalachian State, although they're a good team this year, and we've got some nuggets on them that we will get into. Find us at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. We're doing these season previews position by position, but then as you're seeing today, opponent by opponent of the season coming up, you'll be able to catch them all at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. You can subscribe there. You can also come to clemsonkickoff.com, because if you've got those notifications turned off in the app, we'll send you an email. Just sign on up and we'll let you know when fresh episodes drop. We're also starting to work on the Tiger Trends blog. We may have some complimentary material to these episodes going on there as the summer goes on. But let's go ahead and get into who could have made a difference for this Tigers team in the portal, or at least at what position. And Daniel, I'll let you bat lead off because I don't disagree with you on this, even though I had picked a different position as being just a little more important. But where would you have gone shopping in the portal if you would have just taken one guy?
Yeah, I think we could have said two, right? One at your position, one at mine, and we'll be fine. I think center. I absolutely, and I've said it in another episode. I think center is the biggest question mark on this team. Now, maybe one of those guys gets the job done, but it just feels like they could have gone and gotten a starting center, someone with some experience, someone who started somewhere else, and just has that playing resume that you need, as opposed to a projection. And I think that's what you're looking for right now at Clemson. Is we got a couple of guys, we like them, we think they can do the job, we project they can do the job. And look, believe me, I trust Dabo Sweeney and Matt Luke. They know way more about this than I ever will. But I would have liked to have seen a starting center come out of the portal with some experience, because I feel like the rest of the offensive line is pretty good. I feel like the rest of the offense is pretty good, and I think the defense is really, really good. So it just felt like center could have been a spot where they could have gotten some experience help.
Yeah, and there's a lot about Dabo Sweeney's approach to the portal that I really like. That he is
Yep.
going to develop his own guys. That he can go on the recruiting trail and say, "I'm not just going to tell you I'm going to develop you and not process you out. I can show you year after year after year after year guys who have stayed on this team and been developed, and even if it takes all the way to their fifth year of eligibility, that they have that chance to blossom." Did Justin Maskell get 6 years before he blossomed as a defensive end last year? Was he a
Yep.
5 year guy? I'm not sure which it was, but there's a perfect example. Mark Fields in the defensive backfield a few years ago. Took him a long time to really put the game together, but Mike Reed kept working with him because the physical talent was there, and he made it happen. And so I love that faith. I love that loyalty to his own players. But there's also a Dabo Sweeneyism that game recognizes game. And I think if the offensive line looks around the room and they're mostly wondering, well, yeah, which of these two guys, three guys is going to be the center next year, there's a viable argument to be made to say, hey, bring in a guy for 1 year, have him push that competition. Maybe he leads that competition and someone surpasses him. Maybe he takes it over from day one and plays nearly every snap of the year. However it turns out, I don't think you can argue with bringing someone else in. And where I will say, on my list of pros and cons, one of the pros is that you did lose Zechariah Owens to the transfer portal, so you have a spot there. If there's a late guy who could come in, maybe he doesn't start week one against Georgia, but with 2 bye weeks in the season, maybe there's a point where that depth comes in handy and where he can outright win a job and take over, even though he wouldn't have the benefit of spring football to learn the Garrett Riley dirt raid, as he likes to refer to it. A lot of pulling, a lot of things that the offensive line would have done last year that it didn't do. And when they played a little more straightforward, a little more hat on a hat, you saw the returns. They won against Notre Dame. They won out the rest of the season, but it's really not running the offense the way that it's designed to be run. And I'm sure that Garrett Riley and Matt Luke want to be able to do that. So before I get into my pick, ClemsonKickoff.com, go ahead, check out the new website. It is under construction, reconstruction. It's not reloading, it's rebuilding, and it looks like it, but there's still some cool stuff there, and you won't be able to see it. I would have gone with quarterback. If I had had one spot at portal to bring a guy in, it would have been quarterback. It would have been an experienced air raid kind of guy, hopefully more like that dirt raid that Garrett Riley wants to run. Someone who's not airing out 60 passes a game, but understands a run pass balance like Dabo Sweeney and Garrett Riley both prize, and someone who could say, hey, if this guy's going to start, then it's someone that you can look to Cade Klubnik and say, this is about your development. This is about taking a year, this is about taking a gap year and really figuring things out and adjusting your mental clock to the game. But if Klubnik is able to beat out someone like that legitimately and win the job and earn every snap in the year, that's a confidence builder. So I don't think you can really go wrong either way. I don't think Klubnik is the kind of guy who's just going to up and ship out of the program just because he loses the job. I think he's very committed to who Dabo Sweeney is, a lot of the core beliefs and values, and they're both very strong outwardly expressing their faith. I think that means a lot to him, and I think he would have taken it as a learning experience. I don't think there are very many quarterbacks that you can say that about, but I think this is one. And I think, I don't just think it, I'm quite confident that quarterback is a position where this team has to get better with decision making and with field vision. And I think it's going to be a big step ahead for Cade Klubnik to be able to do those things this year with only the likes of a redshirt freshman and true freshman, a redshirt, two. I'm not sure if Pierman is a redshirt or a true freshman coming in this year or sophomore. You looking it up there?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, but I mean, he's obviously not a guy that was on scholarship when he got to the team, right? So
exactly.
There's not a lot of depth at quarterback right now.
No.
And Pierman's listed as a redshirt sophomore on the roster. It's look, I get what you're saying. I'm not going to argue against quarterback because I think it's a good point. I just felt like when you asked me the question, center is an immediate need to start.
Yep.
Quarterback, I don't know that a guy would have come in and automatically won the job. But here's the point. Let's say somebody came in and didn't win the job. Well, what happens if Klubnik gets hurt? What happens if he has another game like he did against Duke where he's really struggling?
Yeah.
And you've got a veteran guy sitting behind him. Now, I know they love Christopher Vizina. I know they love Pierman. But it sure would make you feel a lot better, at least as a fan or someone who's watching the team, to say, okay, there's a little bit more experience behind him than what you have right now, because that's kind of lacking where they are. I mean, it's not kind of lacking. It absolutely is lacking with what they have right now. So that's going to be a really big question mark going into this season.
Yeah, we will see how it all unfolds. I think everyone is confident in that defense. I don't think that's, I think that's why neither one of us gave even a moment of thought to, would it be a defensive position? No, it wouldn't.
Yeah,
it's somewhere on offense, and some would argue receiver, but I think Clemson's doing pretty well to develop the guys at receiver and to make sure that with two freshmen coming in, with some guys getting healthy, with some guys who have shown early on in their freshman years, and Tyler Brown and Antonio Williams, I think the depth is there. I think we're going to see productivity out of the receivers if the quarterback has more plays where he has a chance to throw, and if he improves his field vision and his timing, that clock in his head, and just understands how to run the offense. And let's face it, if he will run the plays that are called. And then that, frankly, to me, that's one other thing. If a guy just flat out doesn't run the play that you call, and in fact, when you say no matter what happens, Shipley's got to get the ball, and we're talking about the situation at the end of the Miami game there, and he doesn't do it, why is he taking the next snap under center to me?
Well, you know why.
We know why, because there was not another substantially qualitative option to go to. And I feel that's the case again this year, that there's just, you know, I'm not benching Klubnik for a play or two to prove a point and risking what Trent Pierman or Chris Vizina might do with the ball in that situation. Now, maybe they're further along than you and I realize, and that's an option, and that's why they don't need a transfer in. Paul Tyson is also there using the scholarship. You would like him to be good enough to be able to go in for a snap or two, make smart decisions. Again, do what needs to be done to get Klubnik back in the right headspace. I just don't see that.
Well, if I call a play and you don't run it, and then it happens again, you're sitting next to me. You're not. I'm sorry. The Florida State play. Remember the Florida State play
Yes.
where the play was clearly to hand the ball off, and if you hand it off, Bill, I don't remember which running back it was, if it was Moffa or Shipley, they got the first down. They just didn't have the ball.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's that cannot happen if you're going to be a smart offense with a quarterback who's running the offense. And remember, well, you and I've talked about this. The last thing Clemson needs is Cade Klubnik trying to play hero ball.
Right.
Right? He doesn't need to be Superman. He needs to run the offense.
Yep.
He needs to feel the offense. He needs to read the offense and stop trying to settle with being the best athlete on the field like he was in high school. You were the best athlete in high school, on the field in high school, and you could out athlete people. You're not going to do that in college.
Right.
You have to run the offense. And that is a huge key to what happens this season. I think he will. I think he's grown up some. I think the Kentucky game will help him. I think them showing zero confidence in him against South Carolina. Now, they didn't have to, but they didn't do anything offensively in that game.
Yeah.
I think that has to be an eye-opener to be like, hey, I need to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Even the Notre Dame game, it was run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. So I think all of that stuff has got to kick in. I think it finally will this year.
We'll find out. You can follow us on Twitter, by the way, and on Instagram at Clemson Kickoff, a couple of places where we tend to post most often. Let's go ahead and preview the Appalachian State Mountaineers, the week 2 opponent for the Clemson Tigers. Not a weak opponent. I mean, this to me feels a lot like the Duke game. Fortunately, it's at home. Fortunately, it's not the very season opener. But to me, Appalachian State is a team that can be a little bit underrated. And they'll sneak up on you. They snuck up on conference favorite James Madison last year, got the win. That was their best win of the season. Went 9-5 overall last year and 6-2 in the Sun Belt, and did so under head coach Sean Clark, who is a guy who came up through the ranks in Boone.
Yeah, played offensive line there, had been an offensive line coach throughout his career, came back to App State as an offensive line coach / co-OC, and then became the head coach. Look, we know what kind of tradition Appalachian State has. I mean, that is a championship program. I know it was on the FCS level, but even since they've come to the FBS, they've been a really, really good program and have done a good job in the Sun Belt. So this is an interesting home opener. You kind of wish this was the season opener the week before and then kind of build into the Georgia game. But look at the start of Clemson's schedule. Georgia, App State, NC State. That's not easy. Those are 3 really good teams, and Clemson's going to have to be ready to go right from the start.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about that bye week so early in the season either, quite frankly. You'd like to have that just a little bit later, even if it was moved to before the Florida State game instead before the NC State game. App State, however, like I said, as my dad would have said, they're nobody's lunch meat. Like, they're a pretty solid team. And when you look at the D line, you've got a couple of guys in Santana Hopper and Michael Fletcher who are capable of doing some damage. Hopper, a 6'2", 265 sophomore. Look, he's scaring me so much I can't even get his dimensions out, right? He's kind of their Peter Woods, though. He moves around quite a bit. He's very versatile. You'd think maybe they will find a way in a scheme to figure out what's the weakest spot on Clemson's front. Georgia may be able to identify that in week 1. and they can move Hopper where he wants to be, where he can thrive the most, and maybe do a little damage. So Clemson may have to game plan around him a little bit. Michael Fletcher's a little bigger, 6'5", 275, but Hopper is the guy to watch there.
He is a good player. They're both good players, and that'll be a challenge for Clemson's offensive line, which we know is a question mark for this program going into this season.
Yep. Get past that line, and you are looking, if I can bring it up, there we go. Nate Johnson leading that linebacker core. Good size at 6'5". He's just a sophomore. But again, when you're looking at App State, they have been able to contain some pretty big offenses in recent years. They've played well against Coastal. They've played, they beat James Madison, nice overtime contest. Didn't, had the conditioning to hold up in an overtime contest and have done very well. Then several good defensive backs led by Ethan Johnson at corner, 5'11 junior. Also safety Jordan Favors is a 5'11 junior. And you've got a Varian Cole at the star position, basically a safety, bigger guy, above 6 foot and 200 pounds.
Talent, right? And athleticism. I mean, look, there's a reason why App State puts guys in the league every year. It's because they recruit really well and they have talent. And I think again, this is going to be a challenge for this Clemson offense to compete against this defense. You would think eventually the depth and would win out, but this is not going to be a pushover for this this App State defense.
No, and look, maybe they don't have great height in the secondary with some of those guys, but you're talking about, again, just very functional defense. And I think back all the way to when I was working in the Carolinas, saw a few games up there in Boone. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen any sporting event is that football stadium up there in Boone. Fortunately, Clemson's not making the trip up there. We get this game at home in Death Valley. Just a little more beautiful there, if you ask me. But when I saw those guys play, and like Dexter Coakley, who ended up being a great NFL linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys for quite some time, he was undersized. And you think, man, year after year, you see great players not get drafted because they don't quite have the size that the NFL teams are looking for in the combine. He made it work. There's a long history of football players who maybe don't have the measurables, but are fabulous once they're on the field. So let's move over to the offense now. A couple of wide receivers that need to be watching. They do have height, both 6'2", in Caden Robinson and Kristen Horn, and both seniors.
Big guys and experienced, right? Now, I also feel like this could be Clemson's strength is the Clemson secondary. I love Clemson's cornerbacks. I love their safeties. Again, the pass rush is going to be good. That's all connected and tied. You can have great corners and safeties, but if you don't rush the quarterback, it's going to put those guys in a bind. So I like what this matchup is with Clemson and App State. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah. A sad note to pass along: the offensive line will be regrouping after having lost possibly their top player, who they expected to lead them into the season, in Jack Murphy. And of course, we send belated condolences and all the best wishes in the world, thoughts and prayers, and just you hate to see a team impacted like that. From their point of view, you hope it's a rallying cry. You hope it bonds them and brings them closer together. Clemson's defensive line, of course, one of the strengths out there on the Tigers defense, and you hope that they're going to have. They may need a bounce back game after Georgia. You would hope that they'll be able to play the scheme that they're supposed to play and get out there and just do the work. Last year, Kanye Roberts had a very good year at running back behind that App State offensive line. He was not their lead running back, still had 696 yards per game, total for the season, 49.7 per game, but 5.7 yards per carry is actually looking really good. That was last year as a freshman. He's 5'11", 205. He comes in as a sophomore, and he's going to help lend balance to a team that brings back an experienced quarterback.
He is. He's a really dynamic young guy, and again, just a sophomore. But he's one of those guys. Bill, we love to talk about the portal now. It's like this is a guy that you could have seen one of the bigger schools go, okay, why don't you come play for us if you wanted to enter the portal? Not saying that is what he was, but he would definitely be one of those target guys in the portal for a bigger team or a Power Five team if he wanted to go that route. He is a really talented guy.
Yeah. And also very talented is that senior quarterback coming back. He's 6'3 and 220, Joey Aguilar. We will be hearing his name all day long. He will present a test for that Clemson secondary, especially with those tall receivers that he can go to. Aguilar last year, 3,700 yards plus from offense. So 268 yards per game. Nice completion percentage, 293 completions on 460 attempts. And this guy is able to bring it, and maybe a better quarterback for the Mountaineers than Chase Bryce was before him.
Maybe a better fit for the offense. I mean, Chase, I don't know that Chase fit schematically what they wanted to do, but they liked what he brought to the team, and so they kind of schemed some things for him. But no, yes, he's a good player. Good arm, good athlete, and a lot of experience. So he's going to be a test for sure.
Yeah. Let me ask you, where, if there's going to be an upset here, does Aguilar concern you more, or does that defense concern you more?
Well, I think that their defensive front would concern me more because of Clemson's question. I think Clemson will be able to handle Aguilar and Kanye Roberts and the receivers because Clemson's defense is that good. But the offense for Clemson I'm sorry, the offense versus their defense is a question for sure.
Yep. I mean, App State might be the best team in the Sun Belt. I read a few things
Maybe.
coming into this. It could be James Madison. Uh, Most people are expecting a drop off for Coastal Carolina, who has had some very nice recent seasons, but struggling a little bit more since Jamie Chadwell left and went to Liberty. 14 returning starters overall across the board for the Mountaineers this year, and 50 plus players coming back who at least saw some game action, maybe not a ton, but sometimes those guys are able to rotate in a little more when you're in a group of five school, and you can build better depth. And until those next episodes at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff, where you can subscribe and make us happy, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.